Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, whether it is morning for you, as it is for me, afternoon or evening. We really appreciate your time and finding the time to be here with us for a very special presentation. My name is Laura Mon Ginsberg, and I serve as the president of National Council of Jewish Women. I'm here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, center, north part of the United States, and joined by colleagues all over the world, including in Israel, where I will be passing this over to shortly. So thank you for joining us to hear from NCJW's representative in Israel, Kalela Lancaster, and some inspiring guests that we are honored to support through our Israel Granting Program. NCJW is currently working on many fronts to respond to the unthinkable crisis that has ensued since the horrific attacks by Hamas on October 7th. We are leading important advocacy efforts, including at congressional levels, on the hostage crisis, and we are offering various ways for our own community in the US to engage directly, such by saving a seat for a hostage at your Shabbat table, which you can learn more about in some links that we will share in the chat. We are so grateful that NCJW has staff, expertise, and deep partnerships on the ground in Israel. This enables us to swiftly assess needs, build, join coalitions, and provide direct support where and when it is needed most. Since the crisis began, NCJW's on-the-ground team in Israel has been working around the clock to consult broadly with partners in the donor community and civil society organizations. This is, of course, not only to ensure that we can direct resources that address the gender dimensions of this crisis, but importantly, that other substantial actors step up and do the same. Your partnership with NCJW enables us to continue and lead this important work, and I'd like to thank all of you. These are very real and very scary times. So real, in fact, that I must remark here at the top of our presentations, our presenters may need to step away if sirens go off in their area and they need to seek shelter. Of course, we understand and are appreciative that they are able to be here at all, and we ask that you do the same. With that, it is my pleasure to hand things over to Kalela, NCJW's representative in Israel, who will frame and lead our conversation. Thank you, Kalela.
Thank you, Laura, and thank you to all of you for joining us today. There is no doubt that we in Israel have been plunged into the darkest days our country has ever known. I know that things are very hard for Jews in the diaspora as well. You are all worried for us, and we are all worried for you. Today, you will hear a little from me and my guests about how things are here in Israel right now. Our focus will be on how Israeli women are mobilizing to meet the vast needs of women, children, and families whose lives have been shattered or turned upside down by the events of October the 7th and beyond. I want to thank you for joining us and invite you to put any questions you may have in the Q&A at any point, as myself and my colleagues will be monitoring, and we will do our best to answer questions and to put questions to our guests. So our country is still reeling from the trauma of that horrific day 3.5 weeks ago. Every single day, more stories of terror emerge, more names are added to the list of the dead and to those being held hostage in Gaza. Our hearts break each day anew as we watch the desperate pleas of families for the world and our own government to prioritize the return of their loved ones. We remain aghast at the colossal failures that left us vulnerable to such an unimaginably vast and vicious attack. We despair at the ongoing failure of government ministries to reallocate budgets, cut red tape, establish basic systems to support the unprecedented numbers, hundreds of thousands of internally displaced Israelis, people who have lost loved ones, families that have lost their homes, communities torn apart. And now, the ongoing war adds new layers of trauma to the open wounds. Families anxiously wait to hear from their loved ones called up in the vast military mobilization. Their hearts skip a beat when they hear of soldiers killed in action. Rockets continue to rain down on the south, the center, and the north. Each week that passes, it seems a new front has been set alight. And for most of us, scenes from Gaza are also very hard to bear. So an entire nation stays awake at night. During the day, we try to create normalcy for our children. And each day we despair. When will it end? Will it ever end? What will come next? And amongst all this, levels of public trust in the government are exceedingly low. So this is not a good basis for the management of the most severe and most complex crisis our country has ever faced. And yet, I do want to say that through all of this, we are seeing the most remarkable mobilization of ordinary people, spontaneously, without being asked. People everywhere are making food, donating clothes and toys, giving lifts, washing laundry, pulling up crops in fields in the south and planting new ones. Lawyers are helping out with bureaucracy. Small restaurant owners are offering free meals. Even petulant teenagers, of which I have one at home, are volunteering their time, making cookies for soldiers, playing with children that have arrived in their neighborhoods from the south or the north, children who find themselves all of a sudden in new, unfamiliar surroundings. Taking action, being helpful, making some kind of small contribution. This is our nation's therapy right now, our primary route to healing. Also, my colleague on the ground, Einat, Mital, and myself, on behalf of NCJW, immediately wanted to be making a contribution and helping where we could, and maybe in places on which others were not so focused. We understood quite early on that it was vital to apply a gender lens to this crisis, to look at the needs through a gender lens, and also to lift up efforts to meet those needs, also by focusing through a gender lens. The gender dimensions of this crisis are mammoth. The horrific Hamas attack on October the 7th included gender-based violence, which experts warn will lead to secondary trauma. Women's organizations are braced for waves of impact of this and other dimensions of the trauma in ballooning cases of domestic and sexual abuse across the nation. And this will surely be exacerbated by the relaxing of gun controls, which has been spearheaded by Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir. As well, thousands of women currently bear the primary burden of mass displacement, putting their careers on hold to prioritize their families. Through this war, mothers are separated from children. Children are separated from mothers. Also, women dominate professions that face collapse under the burden of repair: social workers, therapists, teachers. And above all else, there is a gaping woman-shaped hole at the tables at which decisions are being made about how to manage this war, how to get out of it, and how to get our beloved hostages back. And at the same time, though, when we apply a gender lens, we do bring into focus the incredible work and astounding acts of heroism by women that need to be seen, supported, and championed. This is why we launched NCJW's Israel Granting Program Emergency Appeal, to address the great challenges for Israeli women and to lift up the great work of women, Israel's real sheroes of the moment, in meeting them. With me today are 4 such sheroes, representatives of 3 of the first organizations that we decided to allocate grants to: Bonot Alternativa, the women's protest movement turned grassroots mobilizer of Women for Women; the Counseling Center for Women, Israel's leading expert on feminist therapy, therapeutic approaches which validate and address the distinct ways that women experience pain, anxiety, and trauma; and Women Wage Peace, the women's movement for peace, co-founded by Vivian Silva, who herself was taken hostage on that terrible day, and the movement whose members include and included many women from Gaza border communities. And while they're not with us at this particular meeting, I also want to let you know that we are as well allocating initial grants to 2 other bodies: the Israel Milk Bank for purchase of breast pumps for soldiers who've been separated from their babies, and to Itach Maki, Women Lawyers for Social Justice, for their work to support women from unrecognized Bedouin communities in the Negev that are suffering greatly at this time. But now I want to move forward with our discussion and welcome our guests. Lee Hoffman Agiv, Head of Operations at Bonot Alternativa. Batya Pilzer, a feminist psychotherapist and women's trauma expert with the Counseling Center for Women, and her colleague Mehdi Nachmiaz Baruch. And Yael Braudo-Bahat, co-director of Women Wage Peace. Thank you to all four of you for joining us today. So I'm going to turn to Lee and start with you, Lee. Welcome,
Hi.
first of all.
Thank you. Thank you.
So what I want to ask you to share with us is a little bit of the story of how Bonot Alternativa essentially pivoted in the moment when these attacks took place and when it was clear what kind of a scale of a situation we were in. How did you get started in setting up logistics centers for civilian war efforts? Tell us how it started.
So hello, everyone. Good morning or good evening. So Bonot Alternativa, or Building an Alternative, was actually founded in 2020 after the horrible rape in Eilat. And it was a group of feminists, women for women. In January 2023, when the new government started to work, we said that this government is going to hurt women, and we decided to enter the protests. We started in January with 400 women, and by March we were over 100,000 women in Bonot Alternativa, which means it was women that joined our WhatsApp groups and was protesting along with us. So our groups are actually divided to communities, and it's geographically divided. So we have groups from the Golan Heights in the north, all the way down to the south to Eilat. And each group is acting as a community. So they were protesting together. They didn't know necessarily each other before, but during the protest, they were protesting together. On October 7th, we woke up to a new reality. At 9:30 a.m., we already had our first meeting. And at the first minute of that meeting, we said that we are going to shift all of our efforts from protesting to assisting, helping, and to act as an emergency organization. By that evening, we already established a website with other protest organizations such as the Pink Front, the High Tech, Brothers and Sisters in Arms, the students, and we created a website that helped people to relocate from their home in the south and move to another home somewhere else in Israel. By Sunday, we already created a war room in the expo in Tel Aviv, and we transformed all of our WhatsApp groups. We changed all the appearance, all the branding, and all the info to Bonot in emergency, so that if you're a woman that needs assistance, it doesn't matter where you come from or what's your opinions or who are you voting for, you'll feel comfortable enough to join a group and ask for assistance. So very quickly, we started helping and assisting inside the community. And that's what we did. It happened very quickly. We started with the logistic requests, and very quickly we decided to open our own war room that will continue on giving assistance to we call it B2C, you know. The expo continued giving services to B2B, like big concentrations of evacuees.
I'm just going to mention that the expo, because you're saying expo, and I think not everybody knows what the expo is. You're talking about Israel's biggest conference center in Tel Aviv, right? The expo center. So I'm just clarifying that for everybody.
Yeah, in expo we founded the big war room, like the biggest civil war room, and we very quickly we saw that there are some needs that will start to pop after the big waves of requests, and we decided to work in smaller scales and inside the community. So that's basically what we did in the first 3-4 days.
So I want to ask you a question about being a women's organization in this effort. As you said, lots of all the main organizations of the protest movement got together straight away and talked about a response. And you know, there are other sort of subgroups within the protest movement. Achim Laneshek, Brothers in Arms, is a very dominant one. But you know, you are Bonot Alternativa, and you are the women's movement. And what I want to ask you, or for you to talk about a minute and explain to people, is why is it important for a women's organization to be involved in this effort in a specific way? And in fact, what is that specific way, and why is it so important?
Well, we start to notice that everyone is really just thinking on how they can get more ceramic vests into Israel and army equipment, and to cook a massive amount of food and send it to the soldiers. And we started putting a spotlight on issues that no one else did. So as you mentioned in your opening, we started thinking of women losing their jobs. We started thinking on women staying at home with the kids and having to work, and also assisting other people while maybe their husband is in the reserved army. We were thinking of women that are working as, for example, medical crews, and their kids are actually left behind with the grandparents. We started thinking on sexual harassments in the evacuees concentrations. We immediately put spotlights on subjects that are not very popular among all of the situation going around, because let's face it, you know, when you talk about sexual harassment, it's not something that you can or want to see. It's not something that you can take a picture with a box and say, look what we did today. It's things that no one actually wants to deal with. But we as a women's organization, we feel like it was our duty to immediately act and to do all of those things. Also, there were horrible war crimes that were committed against women on October 7th. And it is our duty to work together with other women's organizations to collect testimonies and to work on it. And we actually, on Monday and Tuesday, we were in the UN committee. Dr. Kochav El-Kayam was speaking on our behalf. It was the first time, I think, that that happened, that Israelis participated in this kind of committee. So we are putting a spotlight on subjects that most people just, it's not like they don't want to touch it, but they don't really think about it.
Thank you. And I want to refer to some comments in the chat, which is about the use of the term war room. And just to say that there is an acronym in Hebrew which is being used the acronym is Hamal, which literally stands for Cheder Milchama, which does mean war room. But the English application of that, not exact translation, but conceptual translation, would be situation room. It's a situation room, and what it's used to refer to is logistics centers. We do live in a militaristic society, so the terminology comes from that kind of world. but it's not a military effort, it's a civilian effort. So I just wanted to clarify that in case there was any confusion. And I want to ask you, Lee, as we move forward now, we're into a different phase perhaps than the initial phase. I want to ask you what you see as being the main priorities moving forward. And also, if you could address, you gained prominence as a movement in the context of the democracy protests. And I want to also bring you back to that and ask, is there any relevance to that at this stage? How do you see it, what do you think is going to be important for us as a society to move forward in any kind of possible conception of the day after this war? So it's really about looking to the future.
Well, I feel like we're starting from scratch. I feel like our worst nightmares happened, and it's not the first time in the Jewish history that I believe that it's not the first time that Jewish people feel like I feel now. And now we have a mission to rebuild our society, to rebuild our trust. People are not sending their kids to school, even though the school is working, because they are afraid. So we have a lot of work here to do on our personal feeling of security. Our work as a women's organization, it will never end. We have a long way to go, especially here in Israel, where you have almost no Israeli women representing us, and we don't have any women at the decision-making table. So we have a lot more work to do. And we will always have a responsibility to keep Israel liberal, democratic. We didn't finish the job, and I feel like we still have a mission to have more women in the government and in the, we say that we need a chair in the table. We need more chairs in the table, and our job is really, it's not finished, and we will not stop until we will achieve our current goals, and then we will have new goals.
Okay, thank you so much, Lee. There's so much to probe into, and there's so much more to tell, because I know that Bonot Alternativa are really making an absolutely mammoth effort in what's going on, and I really appreciate you. And I want to say thank you on behalf of us to all of your movement. And I'm going to turn now to our friends from the Counseling Center for Women, which are Batya and Meda. Thank you so much for Batya and Mehdi. Thank you so much for joining us. So I would like to ask you, whichever of you want to take this forward, just to start by explain to us a little bit about the Counseling Center for Women and your unique feminist approach.
Hi, I'm gonna start with that, and hello everyone. I'm just gonna start by giving a very short description and history of our organization. So CCW was founded in 1988 by a group of female psychotherapists, and for over 35 years, the organization has been providing subsidized psychotherapy from a feminist perspective to women in Israel. The main focus being on the privileged women and women at risk who cannot afford long-term therapy. We also have clients who choose us because of our specific approach, which is the feminist approach, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So among our clients, we have survivors of abuse and violence, women who have experienced trauma and post-trauma, as well as women struggling with depression, anxiety, illness, eating disorders, and also women from the LGBTQ community who face a lot of challenges. We have a team of 30 professional psychotherapists, varying in ages and backgrounds. And the organization has two main branches, one in Jerusalem and another one in Ramat Gan. And we also have a lot of satellite clinics spread around the country. So we basically provide around 10,000 psychotherapy hours to women in Israel every year. And what is unique about the organization is, first of all, the feminist approach to psychotherapy, because feminist psychotherapy is different from other forms of psychotherapy in the fact that it takes into consideration the political and social context and its influence on women. So as we would like to say, personal is political and political is personal. And basically, this type of psychotherapy sees women as an expert in her reality, and the relationship between the therapist and the client is not hierarchical. And actually, this approach really influences the way we run the organization too. We run the organization by collaborative administration. Everyone has an equal say, including the students. And I'm just going to stop here because I think Batya is going to expand on the feminist psychotherapy more. So I'm leaving it to Batya.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really great to get that overview and sort of make sense of your organization in our minds. And I would like Batya to, if you could continue and explain a little more about the feminist approach, but in particular, I would also like you to maybe also, because you are actually an expert in you specialize in trauma, you have an expertise in trauma, and I wanted to ask you also if you could share with us your thoughts, or maybe I would say your concerns about the situation that our society is in right now. What are your concerns about the impact of this, on a mass level, of how we might be sort of internalizing these traumatic events that we're living through?
Thank you, Kalela, and thank you, everyone. Indeed, as was said, this is an absolutely unique situation that we've never been in before. And everyone is affected. I think women are affected even more. And I can say that I think if I have three kind of concerns, which are also long-term, three main concerns. One is the fact that we have here persistent trauma. It's persistent and it's accumulative. This is actually an Israeli term. It's a term that was a concept that comes from Israel, because we have people who've been in one terrorist attack after another, experienced one war, one after another, and it accumulates. And that's something unique about trauma here. And since October 7th, we were all exposed. What we went through was horrific, but we're re-traumatized too frequently when we find out that, someone else we know was killed, someone else we know is kidnapped, and what we're exposed to. So that's big. And we're dealing with ongoing acute trauma in that sense. I'll say that our work is very geared to avoidance of PTSD. So the post-traumatic stress disorder, the clinical definition is that we define it after time, and we have a window of opportunity to intervene and to try to prevent the very difficult outcomes of PTSD, and intervening with individual and group therapy can be very, very effective. And that's something that we're absolutely focused on. A third concern that I'll list here is the day after. Okay, how do we return to normalcy? How do women and men and everyone feel comfortable and safe once again? And I'll say something that's sensitive, but how do we also go back to coexistence in this country? And I will say that at our center, our clients are Jewish or Arab, and the groups which we've been running also bring these different people together, and we want to continue that conversation. There's tension now, but it's clear to us that's part of the day after. So Kalela, I hope that answers some of your question.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were talking, I was wondering sort of how this reverberates, what you think as feminist therapists about how this reverberates specifically for women. And so I have that as a question, and I want to also ask another one, because maybe you'll answer them together, which is more practical about actually, what are you doing right now? And how are you tackling, what is it, how is CCW contributing, I would say, to the vast effort that is underway and needs to be underway to begin to heal some of these incredible wounds and scars. So specifically on women, and what are you up to?
Okay, I'll try to answer both together, do my best. Women are deeply affected by what's going on. Home, which was always our safe place, doesn't feel safe. I think the first week, what I heard from everyone, the two mantras that I heard over and over within interventions were, "This was my nightmare." I think every woman that I met with said that. Men, not as much. I treat also men, not in the center, but women, that was a slogan that women repeated. "This was my nightmare," and it came true. And the other thing is, I don't feel safe at home. And there's a ripple effect. And I think that when we work with a woman, we affect her children. They're feeling safe. We affect, if she is the principal of a school, we affect the resilience there. When we can help a woman regain her resilience, when we help women reconnect to their resources, their natural resources, we help women learn, and we practice together in the groups that we've been doing tools for self-regulation. Okay, how to calm oneself, how to calm one's children, how to calm one's environment, whether it's in the joint bomb shelter in the building. And some of our clients are also in positions of influence and power, and also how do they approach the world. So those are some of the things that we're kind of coping with. I will say that a lot of our staff, the vast majority of our staff, we have a lot of experience, and a lot of us are experts in treating sexual trauma. And that's something else that's unique to women. Of course, men also go through sexual trauma, but not to the same degree. And the fear, we know that things that were done by Hamas on October 7th were brutal. And for women who suffer from PTSD from the past, women who've experienced sexual violence in the past, this is just really, really triggering, very, very difficult. Being able to talk about it, which women are able to do more in a women's only environment often, is really, really helpful. And as we know from the early years of the feminist movement, women coming together and processing this is extremely healing. So the ways in which we're intervening is, the first is with individual therapy, really believing and seeing also the ripple effect. And women come back and say, the way I functioned this week, the way I was at work, the things that we talked about. And again, what Mehdi said before, personal is political, political is personal. Which is unique to feminist therapy, right? In traditional therapy, it's all about what's going on within oneself. There's very little connection to the world outside. We bring that in always, and certainly in a time like this. It's relevant, and we want to empower women in their environments with what's going on. We want to connect women to their values. So we do this in individual therapy. We've been doing this in group therapy. Okay, so we've had groups for women who are single moms coming together. They're very distressed. Women who speak languages other than Hebrew, whose native language is not Hebrew, and information is less accessible to them as our resources. We've been trying to also give tools, giving coping skills, self-regulation skills we've been teaching, and there's a lot of request for that. We've also been intervening with journalists who are going through a lot. And I'll just give an example from a group that I facilitated last week. We had almost 60 women register, and many participate. There's been a request for a lot more, but because it was a women's only group, we had ultra-Orthodox women attend who would not have attended a co-ed group, and we had Muslim women, religious Muslim women, and they came together, and we practiced different tools together, and they also supported each other in terms of how am I coping, what's helping me, what's helping you. And that's building sisterhood, which is something that we need also for the day after. One more realm in which we intervene regularly. I'm sorry, I know there are comments. I'm not able to
Don't worry about the comments, because we're also monitoring them.
Great, terrific. So one more realm in which we intervene, which I think is also significant, is we train therapists, we train students on a regular basis. some of our students have taken upon themselves afterwards, have gone on to leadership positions in different organizations, feminist organizations. We're considered the experts for teaching feminist psychotherapy. And what we'd really like to do more of, and we're looking at doing now, is really trying to train and give supervision to more psychotherapists so that they can intervene with women with more gender sensitivity, awareness. And
we do think that that's definitely the need of the hour, because really, the whole therapeutic community is mobilized for this effort. And to us, we feel that you have a lot to give, not just directly with clients that you work with, which is important as well, but also in inculcating these approaches within the entire therapeutic community. So we're with you on that, and we're really hopeful to hear more when we check back in with you about what you've managed to do in relation to that. And so I think we're going to, time is very short, and I have so many questions and so many things that I did want to ask, and so much is coming up in the chat. But I think that we're going to pause
Kalela,
there.
if I can conclude with one sentence, is that okay?
Oh, yes. One sentence.
One inspiring sentence that I'd like to share. This is from Dr. Edith Edgar, who's a Holocaust survivor, a psychotherapist herself. And I think this is inspirational. It's something I've been using a lot with clients. And she says, we don't always get to choose what happens to us, but we do get to choose how we respond to our experience. And that's something I think we can all, when we're distressed, that's something we can really take and carry with us. We have that freedom. We can choose, empower ourselves and others with that, and try to bring meaning into our lives with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to both of you, and thank you for insisting on clothing in that way, because it's also important to remember that I think that everybody here, I mean, I work at NCJW, my colleagues are in America, my family is in the UK, and everybody in the Jewish community is going through trauma right now, all of us. And so it's, I appreciate you being on this call and not just talking about what you're doing here on the ground in Israel, but also giving everybody on this call a little bit of support in the moment. So thank you so much. And now I would like to move on and invite my final guest, Yael from Women Wage Peace. It's very emotional and moving to have you here with us, Yael. And I want to start on a personal level. I know that your dear friend and co-founder of your movement, Vivian Silva, has been kidnapped with Hamas. And your movement itself, which was originally founded in response to the Gaza War of 2014, your movement has many members from the Gaza envelope communities, some of whom lost their lives on that awful day. So I want to ask you if you can share with us a little bit about how Women Wage Peace as a movement have been handling this horrific shock and loss.
Thank you. Yes, it's as I've been saying for the past almost 4 weeks now, it has been very difficult to be peace activist during these days, during those weeks. We are terrified and we're worried about Vivian Silva. She's one, as you said, one of the co-founders of Women Wage Peace. Personally, she's one of my mentors. I learned from her a lot. She has been a peace activist for decades. She's 74 years old. In Women Wage Peace and other organizations, she's been driving sick people from Gaza to receive medical care in Israeli hospitals. She has been in Gaza, again, working in the field for many, many years. We are also very worried about Batya Heyman. She's from Kibbutz Nir Oz. She's the mother of one of our activists, Neta. And we're also following to see if there are any news about her. We're grieving. We lost several members of Women Wage Peace. Orit Svirsky from Be'eri is one of them. She was at our event. We had a very big event, very hopeful event on October 4th, just 3 days, 2.5 days before this massacre began. We said goodbye to about 1,500 people men and women who came from both the West Bank and Israel to call together for peace. And second, call. Okay, sorry, just a call popped up. And Orit was one of them. And 2.5 days later, she was murdered in her home in Kibbutz Be'eri. Her son is missing, is kidnapped by the Hamas. So it's really horrible times for everyone. It's very difficult to be a peace activist currently. But we took upon ourselves to carry the hope and still advocate for a political agreement, a political solution for a resolution for this conflict. Because for us, these events, I think more than everything, proves that we are right. Because everyone should have listened to us, calling for 9 years and other organizations for decades to resolve this conflict in a political agreement that will provide security for us, for our children, for the next generations to thrive and live in this area, in this region, because we are all here. We're not going anywhere. And we cannot keep on living from one route of fighting to another one. And we now see the horrific impact of not having a political agreement. So again, we're very conflicted. We're grieving, we're worried, we're angry, but we're also keeping the hope on and keep working for this to happen.
Thank you, Yael. I mean, I think it's really moving to hear this from you. And I wanted to ask you as well, and I think it's also come up in the chat. Are you in touch with anybody in Gaza at the moment? Are people in your movement? What do you hear from them? Are there women in Gaza that you're connected with?
So we're connected with women mostly in the West Bank and also in Gaza. For the past 2 years, we have been working with our sister movement, the Palestinian sister movement, Women of the Sun. This is the movement that we had our joint event on October 4th with. And we're in constant contact and connections since the first day of the war, worrying about each other, comforting each other, sharing the pain, sharing the fears and also the hope. Women of the Sun also have activists in Gaza. We were in touch with them mostly during the first 2 weeks of the war. After that, it became quite challenging to be in touch with them. But we do receive from our partners in the West Bank updates, both on what's going on in Gaza and what's going on in the West Bank, which is also hitting, and we're very worried about this as well. So we're in touch all the time. Again, not giving up on our partnership, on our joint cause, our mother's call, which I invite everyone who's listening now to go into Women Wage Peace website and find and sign our mother's call, because it's so crucial, especially during these days. I just want to say that as far as we know, three unfortunately, and tragically, 3 women of the Sun from Gaza were killed during the attacks with their families. This is what we heard.
So I just want to say that we'll be happy to share the mother's call following this call. So I wanted to say that we at NCJW decided to offer you at Women Wage Peace a grant of faith, which means that you didn't submit a proposal. It's not about a specific program. We know that it's taking you a minute to figure out your response organizationally, which is completely understandable. But we decided to offer you this modest grant in this moment as an act of faith and solidarity, and in recognition of the importance of your voice for the future. Still, it would be interested to hear whatever you can share with us about conversations that are happening within Women Wage Peace right now about possible ways forward.
So first of all, I want to say what we're already doing. We're very active on social media. in mainstream media. It's very important for us to convey this message that that even now, again, as terrified and angry and worried and we are and devastated, we don't lose hope on peace. We call for the immediate return of all captives. We call for taking humanitarian steps for the people, for the civilians of Gaza. And we say that the only solution, the day after the war, the only thing that needs to be done is promote a political solution. So this is one thing that we're doing. It took us also some time to draft and articulate this our message, our opinion, because we are a diverse movement. We have Arabs and Jews and religious and secular and women from the wide spectrum of the Israeli political map, and we take decisions and with consensus rather than voting. So majority. So it took us some time and deliberations to formulate and articulate what we want to say. And since then we're saying it everywhere we can. We also began during the past week or so to have some small, to conduct some small actions on the ground, solidarity actions. For example, we visited last week the situation room of the Bedouin women in the Negev, helping. I mean, visiting
We're
them.
also supporting through a different project.
Exactly, yeah. So they established this situation. The women of the Negev, the Bedouin women, are operating. They established and operating a situation room, and we went to show our solidarity and also help them. We have events and meetings of Arab and Jewish women in several parts of Israel. As was said here before by one of the speakers, we know that the day after and also now this very fragile texture of living together, of shared living, shared life, of Jews and Arabs in the region, in this country, and in Israel, is also at stake. And we are doing everything we can, not only the day after, but now, to prevent escalation, to tighten the connections, to emphasize, because the Israeli public, both Jews and Arabs, need to know that it's happening. That everyone is so afraid, so scared. I mean, I walk in the street and see a woman with a hijab, and I might be scared. Me personally, maybe less, but people are scared. And the same thing, our Arab members tell us that they're afraid to go out and speak Arabic and wear hijab outside their homes. It's awful, really. It shouldn't be this way. And so one of our missions currently is to highlight the partnership and shared society and keep living together. And now we are also beginning to think, and of course we attend all the demonstrations calling for the return of the captives. We support the families who need our support. We show their solidarity with the families of the victims and the captives, and we are beginning to think again, not very quickly, but we need to think about the day after the war. We don't know what's going to happen. No one knows how long it's going to take, how it's going to end, what's going to be next. But if there is one thing that we are very certain of, is that this paradigm of conception of managing the conflict collapsed. We cannot, I mean, no one can, I personally think, and we think, that no one can still believe that Israel can go on managing the conflict. This conflict needs to be resolved with a political solution. So we're thinking about directions, possible directions, and now we're in the dark because we really don't know how things are going to be, when it's going to end, but we're beginning to think about it. And for us, it's obvious that we're going on. Because just to say that, because if it doesn't resolve, the next round will be bloodier. It's going to be more violent, and I don't even want to think or imagine what can happen. Yeah.
I think it's really clear that there's no way to think of any kind of future that isn't a complete game changer from the way things have been until this point. And I want to thank you, Yael, really for bringing a fragment of hope into this conversation, along with the other speakers. And the truth is it possible to bring all the other speakers back in for a moment? We had so many questions, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them. But there was one question which I want to kind of ask as it is, and maybe it could be adapted for all of you to maybe say a word on, a very quick word, just a 1 minute word from each of you, maybe from each organization. The question was really directed at the Counseling Center for Women, and the question was, how can we in the US offer emotional support? What can we do to help with the emotional shouldering the emotional burden of what Israel is going through? And I think that each of you maybe could address this from your own angle. What can our community in the US be doing? Aside, fundraising is happening, and advocacy for the hostages is also happening and very important. And we are involved in both of those things. Do you have any other thoughts about ways that that an international sisterhood can help at this time? Anyone who has an answer for that on one leg? Would be really interested to hear.
I can say that, first of all, we invite you to join us. We have an updates group in English. And basically, I think that talking about the situation, raising awareness, even posting on social media, calling your relatives and asking for their well-being. I know that personally it really helps me when my family from New York calls me. So that is what I would suggest doing on a personal basis and on an organizational basis. Just echo the messages, you know, that can really help.
Thank you.
I want to join. Yes, I want to join spreading the word, or the words, and our messages and actions is extremely important. It's also very important for Israel as a whole, because people around the world need to know what's going on here in Israel, specifically with civil society and more specifically with women's organization, how powerful we are, how much we work here to make this region better and provide a better future for our children. And also I invite everyone to follow our social media and newsletters. It can also bring you some hope during these dark days, and take action and spread the word, and remember that conflicts, bloody earth conflicts all over the world were resolved in political agreements because women from both sides united together and pushed for it, and help us, support us in this cause as well.
Here. Thank you so much. Batya, Mary, any additional thoughts?
I generally think that there's one thing that this conflict taught me is the fact that how it's important to strengthen the civil society. Because I mean, I felt this through many conflicts, but in this conflict much more, how the civil society just right in where the state was slow and could not step in and did most of the things. And that's why I think it's so important to support, strengthen, share anything that's, you know, about the civil society generally, I think.
Well, that is a perfect segue. It's like you read my mind, Mehdi, because what I want to do now is say thank you to all of you. Really, thank you from the bottom of your heart, from my heart. I can't take responsibility for your heart, for everything that you're doing. You give me strength, and I hope that, you know, we through NCJW can also give you a little bit of strength too. We promise to do our best to support you and to share your great work with others. And I would like to hand over to my dear friend, Fran Levy, a board member of NCJW who has always championed work in Israel, to wrap up this meeting today.
Thank you.
Oh, Fran, you're muted. Can we unmute Fran?
I got it. Thank you, Kalela. And thank you to our very inspiring guests. It's clear you are all having a profound impact on the ground in Israel. I want to thank you all for your tireless efforts, your strength, your resilience, and your dedication. My heart has always been with Israel, and today is more so than ever, and it's breaking. Kalela shared at the onset that doing and giving are the best routes to healing our broken hearts. I'd like to take this opportunity to turn to you and invite you to be partners in the vital work that she and our partners that you've heard from today and others are leading on the ground. Please give what you can to our IGP emergency appeal and share it with your communities too, emphasizing, as you've heard today, how important it is to apply a gender lens to this crisis so that women's needs are met and women's great strength and resources are utilized in healing and resolving this crisis. To those who have already given, we thank you so much for your solidarity and generosity. We will keep letting you know about our work on the ground in Israel and about new grants that we are able to allocate through the Israel Granting Program. You can also go to our website to take action on the hostages being held by Hamas, as well as messaging and section resources. Thank you all. Be safe. Am Yisrael Chai.